There's a place in this land that would strike fear in the heart of most combine drivers. It's a place where fear is always pulling you to one side of the cab or the other. Up here, it's not just whether or not you can clean grain on a slope. It's whether or not you can stay on the slope in the first place. Here, combines do the impossible. This is the Palouse, the hill country of Oregon. A few hours east of Oregon's coast is a beautiful farming region, and it's a region whose beauty is only matched by its daring terrain. Harvesting on hills presents unique challenges compared to harvesting on flat ground. The most apparent issue is the danger of sliding down the hills or rolling over. The ejected straw creates a slick surface that has sent many combines down the hillside into the valley below. It pays to have a combine that's well balanced and has a low center of gravity when harvesting on these hills. That's why you'll see a lot of gleaners out here.
You always got to be thinking, what if? If something bad's going to happen, you got to have your way out. You make too many mistakes or make a mistake and it could be bad for you or anybody else.
Well, I'll tell you, we've had these combines stand up on their nose a time or two like that with the back tires off of the ground about 8 feet. And that wakes up the operators inside.
But there's a second reason you'll see gleaner on these hillsides. On our competitors' combines, grain falls from the rotor onto the cleaning shoe with a force of gravity. This means on a hillside, the grain piles to one side of the cleaning shoe and overloads it. That spills the grain out the back of the combine. A partial solution to this problem is a self-leveling shoe. However, these only correct the problem somewhat. The next level of correction is a self-leveling undercarriage, which is very expensive, and even then the problem is only partly solved.
With a competitor's combine out here, other than a gleaner, we have experienced that the grain ends up on the ground rather than in the bulker. So that's why we have stuck with gleaners for the last 30 years.
This reduced slope sensitivity is why many hillside farmers choose gleaner combines. But you don't have to live in the Oregon hills to enjoy the benefits. The accelerator rolls that make Gleaner's cleaning system gravity resistant are the same technology that provide the exceptionally clean grain samples and low loss levels. And these are things all farmers can enjoy, no matter where they farm. "2011 marked a record year for farmers leaving John Deere and Case to come to Gleaner. And one of the first things these guys say when they lay eyes on a gleaner is that they didn't know how different it is. There's a good reason for this. The Deere and Case IH designs are remarkably similar to each other, while the gleaner is completely different. Both Deere and Case use some system to compress the crop mat and shift it from a transverse position into an axial position. After it's threshed and separated, it relies on gravity to get grain to the shoe. Both machines rely on the shoe for the majority of the cleaning process. The gleaner system is entirely different. Our transverse design allows unique and beneficial results in 3 major areas of the combine: the feeding and threshing system, the cleaning system, and the overall configuration of the combine. Our unique approach to each of these areas has big results for farmers. Here's how. For most of the history of combines, grain was fed into a transverse cylinder, and there was a good reason for this. Grain is already entering the combine from the front to back using a threshing system that moves in the same direction, minimizing bunching, plugging, and inconsistency on the crop mat. When our engineers designed the first rotary gleaner combine in the late 70s, they preserved this direction of feed for the same benefits. We call our feeding system the natural flow system because we move material in a flat, consistent mat into the rotor in the same manner it is entering the combine. Our competitors use beaters and auger flighting to shift crop that is moving from the front of the combine to the back into crop that is moving from side to side. If you look at the rotor inlet design of our combine, you'll see crop moving straight into the rotor. Once crop enters our rotor and threshing begins, crop separates and falls from the rotor through a 360-degree cage. The wrap of this cage is important because it's crucial that crop only be threshed long enough to release from the heads, pods, or cobs. Crop that remains in the threshing area can become damaged. Our 360-degree wrap means grain exits the rotor once it is threshed. Our competitors' designs are closed in portions of the cage, keeping free grain inside where it continues to impact the rotor's threshing elements. There's another significant issue in our competitors' designs that gleaners do not suffer from. A combination of a partially closed separation area and the design of their rotor can drop much of the grain on either side of the rotor, causing a real issue where the grain is dropped after threshing. Many axial combines use a style of design for opening and closing the concave where there's a pinch point closest to the concave hinge. This area is different in clearance than the rest of the concave in most settings. Often, it's this difference in rotor clearance that causes the release of significantly more grain on one side of the rotor or the other. Because an axial rotor crosses the length of the shoe and the top of the separation grate is closed, the axial combine tends to release grain on the side once the grate reaches a point where it is open. The centrifugal force of material moving inside the rotor cage compounds this problem, actually propelling the grain to the side of the shoe. The Gleaner's transverse orientation and 360 degrees of separation avoid the problem of piling grain on one side of the shoe. But even if it didn't, Gleaner has another technology for smoothing crop out that no other combine has. After grain falls from the processor, a set of augers thin the crop mat into a consistent ribbon of material. The crop is then propelled by the accelerator rolls through an air blast 4 times the speed of gravity and onto the grain pan. The distribution augers ensure a uniform ribbon of crop feeding into the remainder of the cleaning system, no matter where the crop falls from the processor. Once the material is smoothed into a consistent ribbon of crop, it is fed into accelerator rolls which speed up the crop's descent. The propelling of crop allows us to push the material through a high-velocity air blast without blowing grain out the back of the combine. As material is propelled through the air blast, mulch is blown out the back as grain lands on the grain pan below. What distribution augers and accelerator rolls do in a larger sense is allow better control of air and better utilization of the shoe. Distribution augers make the crop mat more consistent and the entire width of the shoe, as opposed to our competitors' designs that pile material on the right side of the shoe. Accelerator rolls and the initial air blast allow us to pre-clean the majority of the material before it even reaches the shoe, making our shoe more effective. Our transverse design means crop and air are precisely controlled, giving Gleaner its legendary low loss and clean grain samples. This control can be seen in 2 distinct areas, on and above the shoe. First, thanks to distribution augers and accelerator rolls, crop material always falls at the front of the shoe in a Gleaner. This is not the case with our competitors, where crop may thresh in the front, middle, or even the back of the rotor. Material that threshes towards the back of the rotor on our competitors' combines misses most of the cleaning effect of the shoe and is dangerously close to falling out the back of the combine. The second area a Gleaner controls the cleaning process is in the control of air. Because the crop in a Gleaner always falls from the same position parallel to the fan, there is little difference in the amount of air applied to each section of crop. This is different from our competitors' design, where crop that threshes at the front, midsection, or rear of the rotor can each receive different amounts of air. With our competitors' design, there is no adjustment that could ensure every portion of crop is hit with the same velocity of air. Our transverse design does more than just feed, thresh, clean, and handle crop more efficiently. The entire design of our combine has major benefits to farmers in several different ways. A Gleaner is a very simple combine. Because it doesn't shift crop, it doesn't need the additional systems for beating or stuffing crop into the rotor. With a Gleaner using more of its concaves and shoe through efficient operation, we simply don't need as big of a machine. The result is a combine that weighs less than any combine in its classes. The rotor in a Gleaner sits in the center of the machine. This allows the grain tank to sit low and wrap around the processor. The result is more grain bin capacity that provides a low center of gravity on the combine. Our competitors must accommodate their axial rotor in order to fit their grain bin in the combine by putting weight up higher in the air and creating a higher center of gravity and a smaller grain bin. Our efficient use of feeding, threshing, and cleaning systems mean a Gleaner can deliver more results from an overall smaller machine. This has benefits whether you're driving into a shed or trying to reach a service point. Farmers tell us they love the fact that they can service most everything on their Gleaner with both feet on the ground. Every combine needs to be serviced, and we believe it's our job to make it easier for you to keep your combine running strong. Gleaners are famous for their ease of service. Here's why. Most of the systems in a Gleaner are like the rotor, transverse in the combine. This means a lot of the shafts are straight through with easy access, and many of the belts sit alongside the machine, so inspection and service is quick and easier than on any other machine. This also goes for our rotor that can be inspected and even removed in a matter of minutes. Just a few bolts and a skid steer, and you can have the rotor out for access to it or other items inside the combine. Because we know you don't always want to have to use a ladder, we put most of the service points low on the combine so you can service them with both feet on the ground. For the past several years, we've been replacing bearings with greaseless bushings and replacing bolts with easier to remove bullet pins. One thing our farmers tell us is that they really appreciate the size of the engine compartment. You can walk all the way around our engine and inspect and service virtually every point from inside the engine bay. A better service combine performs better and lasts longer. We want to make that service easier for you, and we're striving to do it with this new combine. The wheat harvest is moving north, and so will we. But these hills have been good to us, if not a little bit scary. This has been a record harvest for many of these farmers. Lands that yielded 10 bushels an acre last year might have brought in over 100 this year. We're proud of these guys. Their hard work and good luck has paid off. And we're proud of this combine that can take on these hills without breaking a sweat. Out here it pays to be light, nimble, and resistant to gravity. And this year, it pays a lot. As we head down the road, we think about what the explorers thought when they first saw this beautiful country. They likely thought there was gold in these hills. Well, this year, there's certainly silver.